another game this Saturday. We have Scotland hosting the World Champion Springboks in Murrayfield. This is going to be a pretty intense contest, judging by both sides' showings last week. Both sides coming off a good win, a good tight win last week in a very competitive match. It's going to be kicking off on Saturday at 1 p.m. Angus Gardner is going to be the man in the middle with the whistle. We have an Aussie there. Wayne Barnes and Craig Evans on either touchline, with Brett Cronin of Australia also in the TMO. And this is going to be shown on Amazon Prime in the UK and Ireland, I believe, same as most of the games this weekend.
Yay, Amazon.
Yay, Amazon getting involved. But yeah, just as far as colour for this game, Scotland's last win against the Springboks was in 2010 when Dan Parks remember great Dan Parks kicked them to a 21-17 victory.
2010 was definitely Dan Parks' opus year.
It definitely was. But overall, Scotland have played South Africa on 27 occasions. Their first meeting was in 1906, so quite a history. But the Springboks have won 22 matches, and Scotland have managed to win 5, which is not the worst record you'd see against the Springboks. Pretty decent,
reasonably respectable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be. This is a matchup I think you'll find between the lineal champions of the world and the actual world champions.
Yes.
The Springboks lost their lineal title against Australia. Scotland have won it back, and now the Springboks have a chance to claim it back.
It's a title unification bout. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, yeah, this is it's definitely a fun game on paper. I mean, looking at last week and the tight forward-oriented battle that the Scots had with the Wallabies, where they gave just as good as they got and then some.
Yeah, and took out 2 tight heads. If they could do that again this week, they'll be laughing.
They'll be doing very well to take out those Bok tight heads. But they hustled really hard up front. They showed awesome defensive hustle as well, and they were stymieing as far as points conceded. Throw into the mix a Finn Russell-led offence with Stuart Hogg, with some quality players like Rufus McLean now and Duhan van der Merwe on the 2 wings. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a matchup that is at the very least intriguing. It has that Lions backdrop of Finn Russell, and everybody suggesting that if Finn had played,
things might have been different.
We might get to see that. We might get to see.
I would hope so.
Well,
it's off the back of Scotland with their greatest representation in the Lions in a long time in terms of just player for player, and a very good season last year. Despite losing a few tight ones, they won away from home twice. They won a tight one last week. They'll be coming in on a pretty good ebb here, despite
it's near enough the best Scotland team of the Pro era.
I would say it is.
Maybe the late 90s, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
They're a very good team.
Yeah, it's like the quality of the Six Nations sides has all gone up, and Scotland have been spearheading that as well. The 5 top teams and Italy have improved a lot as well. Like anytime you see Italy take on a tier 2 side, you kind of realise, they're in the Six Nations.
They're doing a bit better. Yeah, exactly, no question. Just to look at it from each side's point of view, we're going to start with the hosts, which is Scotland, and we do have the Scottish team.
Yep.
It is not without its surprises. Not to say that there are too many up front. Unfortunately for Ewan Ashman, he's still a bench warmer. He's not been rewarded with a starting berth for his class try.
Yeah.
Stuart McAnally comes back into the team after bringing the water boy last week.
Yeah.
And they have stuck with Sam Skinner and Grant Gilchrist, who went great in the second row last week.
Really good. Yeah.
They've also brought Nick Haining in and moved Hamish Watson to the bench, which is interesting. So Jamie Ritchie moves to 7 and Matt Fagerson is at 8. Presumably the Mish is being kept in reserve to combat that bomb squad.
I'm sure. That has to be a factor into your thinking when you're picking your forwards to take on this Springbok pack. You'd have to keep something in reserve, and the Mish is a good bit of impact. He does do the bench role well. He did it for the Lions, but some of them don't. Sometimes players are talisman who have to start because they're more effective from minute 1. But the Mish is pretty versatile, and he's so bombastic and in the carry that when he comes on against slightly tired defenses, he can do really good damage.
And he can, if he's alert enough, he can get a good jackal steal, and they'll need everything they can get towards the tail end of this game. In the back line, Ali Price and Finn Russell, no surprises there.
Yeah.
But in the centres, another harsh cut for Sam Johnson.
It's crazy. The man plays well every time he gets the jersey and then gets summarily booted out.
Gregor Townsend just can't wait to get rid of him.
It's crazy.
He's
from the outside looking in, he's easily the best 12 Scotland have to offer, with the potential exception of your man Redpath, who did very well in his one showing and then disappeared forever.
It's true. We'll see Redpath again. Yeah. The only thing I will say to that end is that Matt Scott is as close to a like for like as you can get with Sam Johnson, and his form for Leicester is pretty undeniable. He's looking very, very sharp at 12. along with Kelly in that centre partnership for Leicester. He's been kind of lighting it up, and him and Chris Saris is a tough, mean centre partnership with some offensive instincts as well. Both of them can cut a line, which is kind of all you need with Hogg and Russell in your team as well. You just need guys who can cut lines and allow those guys to put you into space.
True.
Then they've also gotten rid of Darcy Graham from last week, brought Rufus McLean in to partner Doohan with the two wingers.
It makes sense given the aerial stuff that they're going to have to deal with in this particular matchup. And like Hoggy is not the most tall fullback you'll see anyway, but you don't want to take Hogg out of the team. And if you're putting him and Darcy Graham on, then suddenly you're at quite a disadvantage height wise in terms of the bombs they're going to have to be diffusing. So yeah, McLean rewarded for good form as well. They have loads of weapons that they can deploy in the back three. To be honest, it's a horses for courses kind of headache.
They all know how to take a try. Those Scottish outside backs. Their bench pretty strong. In terms of impact. Ewan Ashman, Jamie Batty, good impact. Ollie Kebble, definitely good impact.
Yeah.
Jamie Hodgson, didn't see too much from last week,
but those props will be up against.
They will, but they'll be as game as they can be against the best front row unit in the world, which is the Springbok replacement front row. Yeah. Obviously, the Mish, as we mentioned, George Horn, Adam Hastings and Blair Kinghorn make up the rest of their reserves.
Very good. All potential impact there in the back line as well, which is very encouraging to see. Yeah, no, the Scots will be buoyed by, to be honest, this whole year has gone pretty well with a few things going against them, but there's definite improvements all over it, and it's reflected in how many of them went on tour with the Lions, and it's reflected in the more recent results. The Paris win, that big win, or that like narrow win against a very good resurgent 5 in a row kind of Wallaby side coming to town, did very, very well to edge that one too. So yeah, they it's likely that they're in a very physical, very tight contest, because South Africa, even if they're dominant, if Scotland are game themselves, it could be a one-score game in the final moments, which is kind of what they need, because this team can grab tries if they're there.
It can, and it will need to.
It definitely will. There's no way, and we saw the fight with Wales last week. That's like 18 points they kicked from the tee and they didn't grab a try. The Boks grabbed a try, and that's what decides games like that. And the Boks are so good at games like that.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I would also think as impressive as last week was in moments, they weren't quite 100% last week themselves. They probably rode their luck at times. I'm not sure how the game goes if Tupou stays on.
Sure.
And I think if they play a similar game this week and then that bomb squad comes on, they will find themselves on the wrong end of the result. Needless to say, they're going to have to front up front. They're going to have hope to make an absolute game of this. But they are going to have to get some offense off. I mean, we
finally see that Finn versus the Boks in the blue jersey.
It's the key point of intrigue. I mean, this Scottish team, their bread and butter has been striking off set piece.
Yeah.
And we have that dream matchup of the offensive vision of Finn Russell versus the defensive vision of Lukhanyo Am.
Yeah.
And that is,
and to be fair to Gregor, the offensive vision of Gregor, because some of those strike moves off scrum particularly are things of beauty. The way they fold to one side entirely, multiple pullbacks, very good options. Yeah, if they can dial something like that in, it's a really good test for Am and the like.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
First phase.
It's still your best chance. Like the Boks are freakish at getting around the corner, but it's so much easier to defend on multi-phase than it is to defend on first phase. On first phase, you're guaranteed at least 10 meters of space between the two back lines. It's always going to be a 6-on-6 or 7-on-7 kind of matchup.
Yeah.
In at least half a field of space. There's only so much defensive acumen that can help you out in that context.
It's true.
And just looking at the Scots and the Welsh and the Six Nations going to work off those midfield set pieces. That is the element of this game that intrigues me most. Yeah. Will the Scots be bullish and brave? The first thing they have to do, obviously, is secure their line-out ball, secure their scrum ball. So important.
Like I've loved Schoeman's showings so far in the Scottish jersey, but between Tonga and this last week against the Aussies, it's always tough for an expatriated Safa to face the Springboks, I think, particularly if that one is a prop.
Yeah.
So that it's going to be a huge test, the biggest test of his fledgling international career so far.
Yeah.
And it could be make or break. On the other side,
Ollie Kebble off the bench.
Ollie Kebble off the bench, but Xander as well, who he is a lion and he can scrummage very well. Don't turf the first scrum, which he is wont to do very often. That will be a penalty, and it will be.
He had a good game last week, Xander.
He did.
He did some damage to James Slipper. And the one thing I'd say from a Scottish point of view is, as good as that bomb squad scrum is, and it's going to be very, very tough to keep up with them and lock it down. That's the job of Ollie Kebble, the other expat Safa, to lock that down from tight head. And Kebble, to be fair to him, has some heft, so I think he's a chance to lock it down. But that starting Bok front row of Oxenche, Bongi and Bonambi and Trevor Nyakanye scrumming kind of out of position at tight head. He's just not the same scrummager at tight head as Nyakanye. It's not as explosive as Bok scrums can be.
Yeah.
Certainly not as the second half one, and not as other Bok starting front rows have been. It's been kind of hot and cold.
True.
They've had moments, but generally they're not as explosive as all that. And all the Scots want, for the record, is clean ball.
Yeah.
They want their own ball clean and no penalties conceded from either set piece.
That is exactly the mission.
That's what they want.
Exactly that.
Ball for Finn.
Yes. Ball for Finn, and then a chance to attack that Bok line on first and second phase.
First, second and third phase.
Then from then you're probably going to kick it.
And sometimes you're kicking from first as well, let's be clear as well. If you can find a bit of room for Hogg or for Russell to put in one of those deep probing kicks. The Scots, as we said last week, have the long touch finders dialed in like no other team, and that predates the 50-22.
Yeah, the long spiral of both of them. Both of them have a nice spiral kick on them, so they'll need to bring all of that acumen to this contest as well, because they know the back three will be given a job in the aerial game. There's no two ways about it. They will have to be dialed in. Hogg will likely have to go back to retrieve a bouncing ball and kick it away, and it'll have to be tidied up kind of proficiently, because they will have to deal with it all day. That's just what the Boks bring. And similarly, the back row, who have been hustle monsters, there's no Mish to start, but the guys who are starting, they're going to have a hell of a job just containing these guys and making the collision zone competitive, because it's the second you start soaking against them, the tails go up for the Boks, and they love running around the corner when their opposition are soaking meters.
Even on the offensive side of the ball, the forward pack's job is huge. I mean, this Scotland team, as much as they love to strike off first phase, one of the things that they've done so well pretty consistently this year is develop a lovely little rhythm of phase play where they're moving the ball really quickly. It's getting through Finn's hands. It's going from edge to edge. They're probing through the midfield. There's little lines here and there, and they can all of a sudden put 10 or 11 dynamic phases together. It is so tough to put any number of phases together against this Springbok team. They're just so aggressive at the defensive breakdown, and it is on their forward pack to be alert and their half packs.
Ali Price needs to clear those rucks. It's going to be tough, because
it's not on Ali as much as it's on guys to get in to prevent the Springbok guys from competing. But if you are game enough and if you are alert enough to the offensive breakdown, you can turn that into a weakness, and we saw that in moments from Wales last week, because the Boks, they just want to contest everything, and
that means there are fewer numbers out there. If you can clear that ruck and get Finn on the ball, he knows he has numbers, because there's one or two men in that ruck.
And a decent percentage of the time they give up penalties as well from those attempts at jackal steals. Now, plenty of the time they rob the ball as well, but if the Scots can be there, knock a guy off his feet, then all of a sudden you're winning penalties, you're putting points on the board. So if they can work that offense, that wonderful Finn Russell led offense, and kind of own that kicking game as well, territory is going to be hugely important in this. The two Yankees playing for the Springboks, Willie LaRue, Willie LaRue has the odd drop, especially in Northern Hemisphere conditions. If they can edge the territory battle with their class territorial kicking and be as defensively robust as you say in terms of managing those physical contacts on the inside, like you'd trust Chris Harris against the Springbok wide offense, all the evidence of what you're seeing this year, to not give up too much there. All of a sudden you're seeing a picture where Scotland could maybe edge this
make
game.
It a scrap and then edge it. It's definitely like it'll involve emulating similar things to what Cardiff were able to emulate last week, but crucially
Wales
with Cardiff. But Wales were able to kind of muster last week against a stuttering at times Springbok side as well. They just need to be a few degrees hotter than that as well. They will need to find a try. They will need to find something against this. Easier said than done, obviously, but if they're going to come out on the right side of the result in a tight one, it'll involve that too. But as you say, pressure guys like Yankees, who's getting the nod at 10, try and force loose kicks out of him, because those are great ins for Hogg into the game. And you don't want to be multi-phase throwing him to skip pass out to Hogg with Am lining him up. Never a good matchup. Catching a kick and running back at them, bit better of it,
or better. Kicking back at them more is the point.
All of this, they need to kind of control the territory, control their discipline, and try and force a kind of combative, niggly game that the Boks end up on the wrong side of the whistle as opposed to them. These are key little things that could swing it in favour of the Scots. From the Bok point of view, then. It's a very simple recipe for them. It always has been. They're going to look to smash them first in contact. They're going to look to kick most of the stuff from the middle third with a mind towards chasing cohesively and smashing the Scots. They're going to look to bully them in the ruck, bully them in the set piece,
Yeah.
bully them at maul, at try and be as combative and physical as they often are. To be honest, they just need to bring themselves at the pitch. That's what they will be thinking.
No question. We have the Bok team as well. As I mentioned, the Ox and Che, Bongi Mbanambi, Trevor Nyakanye front row. Etzebeth Mostert rotates back in and Bok
with Diager to come in.
Exactly right. Khaleesi,
so
Quagga,
managing
Dwayne.
Minutes.
They've gone with Herschel and Nelton at 9 and 10, which is definitely the most interesting element of the selection.
Yeah.
Herschel did not have a good game last week. Can't remember the last time Elton's had a good game for the Springboks. Especially starting at 10, it's potentially an area of vulnerability for them. The real question from the point of view of selection there, is that going to have a dramatic effect on their offence? Are they going to look to move the ball deliberately a bit more against a tough enough Scottish defence?
Maybe I would still imagine they're going to be kicking a lot of the ball. I think Elton will be in the pocket a lot of the time kicking, because they're going to try and play off Herschel, which is kind of what Faf does for them anyway, and try and run their forwards around the corner. And if they're winning contacts, great, they'll keep going. But the second they lose one or two, they'll probably just sit deep and kick it and reset with the defense. That's just the MO for them. It's smash them. Is they stay disciplined, don't get on the wrong side of the ref, which is easy done. The Scots are annoying. They are definitely annoying to play in a combative one. And like Safa, they're no saints, those Safa forwards. They aren't above being tilted in moment and having the red mist descend and giving away a silly card or something. They need to curtail all of that. Just be disciplined and be physical. Back your defence to smash them. It's the kick and smash. It's simplistic, very much so, but very much effective when they arrive to the pitch of the battle. There are no packs that we've seen so far that can live with them when they are in the mood to smash it.
I agree, especially when just the level of player they bring on off the bench in that class that bomb squad front row. Lou Diager and Jasper Visa to come on as well, and they've also got Cobus Reinach, Andre Pollard and Francois Steyn, which is as good a back supply in terms of
as they've had in a couple of years during this era, perhaps, because it's a 5-3 split, not a 6-2-1, but three very, very capable subs, and given Franz Steyn's man of the match showing from the bench last week, they have all kinds of cover there.
It's impactful and it'll wear on them. I think the most important matchup is what happens on defence. It starts obviously with winning contacts on the inside, but the Boks will be aware that Finn Russell is going to look to bring out the box of tricks.
I would imagine it'll be Quagga who will be tasked with applying the first up pressure on the inside, which is what his normal role is anyway, but he's on Finn pressure, and then outside it's on Am to make that read. He will be trying to watch him and make the read the whole time, but between Am and LaRue watching for the kick behind, they all need to be alert.
You have to be dialed in, and so does Del Indy, because Finn is the kind of man to
no look pass,
angle to throw a wide one and then slip it inside. And if you follow his eyes, you're falling away. Like he definitely tricks you, and the Bok, it's a good challenge for the Bok defence. It's a team that will look to attack them out wide, but they will make it much more difficult for the Scots if they can slow the ball down at ruck time.
Collision will be the first port.
Exactly.
First line of defence against Finn Russell is smashes forwards backwards, and then it becomes a little bit more chaotic.
I'm expecting a big game from the likes of Franco Mostert, who hasn't been in. He's been kind of in and out of the side this year. He's possibly a bit fresher than a lot of these guys. He's back in the second row where he belongs.
Yes, doesn't have to do that crazy shift that he doesn't have the cardio
but before he switched to the back row, he was putting in monstrous showings
particularly on
defense as well,
defensive line out. He was all over it and resourcing the offense. They all know how to lock down a maul.
I've very much praised the Scottish team for being incredibly well rounded. They have a very game forward pack who are underestimated, but at the very, very top levels of the game, we have seen them struggle sometimes. We watched them against Ireland really struggle to just get any kind of traction in the game, be just kind of
It's a similar task here, because they what they like to do, and they still like to do, is soak and jackal in the breakdown, and it's just a risk when you're dealing with a forward. Like the Ireland team they've faced for the last few years had so many latchers attached. It's illegal now to do multiple latchers, but they were soaking and jackling and attempting to jackal a 3-man pod.
It's not illegal to do multiple latchers after the contact.
After the contact, but you're not allowed to line up as they were. But they were trying to do that soak them into a jackal when there's already 3 or 4 men resourcing that ruck. Sure, it was only a metre wider than the ruck. Like, there's no sense in that. You have to kind of front up and stop them there, because otherwise it's cheap. And the Boks will be the same equation. Like, if they're giving them an in around the ruck, they will just take that over and over and over and over again. They'll pick and jam. It may be boring. There'll be no rush to spread it wide if they're winning those soft collisions around the breakdown. And Scotland sometimes are want to give those up. So trying to generate that rhythm, which they weren't quite able to do in Cardiff, admittedly in a wet weather game last week. But Herschel's passing will have to be a little crisper, bring those forwards onto those collisions on their own terms so that they can get that moving. And then it will be on Elton to kind of decide when to pull the trigger. Himself and Villy, who does make reads from the outside as well, and will probably be communicating.
He makes reads from the inside. Sometimes he comes in at 10. I expect we'll see a bit of that with Herschel, with Elton in the team, a bit of sort of holding hands, making sure everything's all good. And he's definitely he's a different dynamic, Villy Leroux, when he's in the team. As good as Fran Stein was at fullback,
he's a little bit more speed.
He's coming into the team with the wide passing game that he has, just allows your back row forwards, your likes of Quagga on offense, to get a little wider from the breakdown.
And they can find tries a little more readily with him there. So that's why he has such faith in him. And they will need to convert their pressure into scores. It is the caveat, it is the little work on for them, is that even if they're dominant in this game, sometimes they're only 3 or 4 or 5 points up.
And they're up against a tough defence. It's definitely
they're also
a good
up
challenge
against a team that can grab if a ball bounces, as much as they like to generate chaos opportunities, Scotland do thrive in chaos opportunities themselves. So as soon as they get a 2-on-1 and a breaking ball, they will pretty much to a man execute that. So they have to kind of limit those, control those, but when they're on top, try and convert that into points.
If I'm to pick likely outcomes for Springbok tries, that said, I'm thinking probably most likely is your maul. Second most likely is your defensive try, your pick, your tackle, forced fumble, recovery, score down the other end, that kind of score, and then maybe your bomb kick that's gathered by Mapimpi.
Or turfed by one of the Scots back three under a bit of pressure and then bouncing up.
Exactly right. Those are their bread and butter. We do want to see them expanded a bit more, but as you rightly point out, they have a ferocious forward pack, they have a ferocious bench forward pack, and they will look to just put the absolute squeeze on. This is the highest level of physicality that rugby gets, and they're going to bank on that being too much for the Scots.
Try and nullify the crowd early doors by winning some dominant kind of contacts, and slowly but surely edge the contest that way. That is the Springbok way. And how do you see it going then, with all that said?
I don't know. It's a curious
call, isn't it?
Early afternoon kickoff as well.
Which is a factor.
It's just a slightly different one. I think the Boks probably.
On paper, the slightly better team, and the actual world champions who have the trophy and all to prove it.
To reclaim their lineal crown. I do rate the Scots. I do rate Finn Russell. I think if Finn Russell is to unpick this Springbok defences, it'll be beauty of a probably game. The rugby moment of the year to see it happen.
And there'll be another fresh row of buses for Warren Gatland to be thrown under then after as well, long after the fact.
No question. Any more ex-players want to stick the knife in? I mean, I do think that personally, I think that Anne is still just in incredible form. There was the factor last week against Wales. Wales again failed to score, but every time it got out as far as that 13 channel, he just ate it up.
He had Davis in his back pocket most of the game. I mean, because he's freaky fast as well. He's getting better. Anne's getting better, and that's a scary thing. I think there will be a fair bit of cancelling out, just given he's lining up against Harris this week. I think
it's just two defensive minded centres. Chances are, a bit like the Aussie game, it'll be decided inside them. Only the Aussie forward pack, especially when Tupou went down, was not a patch on this Springbok forward pack, and so I think you're probably
forwards win matches. And the Boks are big.
I do expect the Scots to play better than last week. I think it'll be a tough game. I don't think the Scots will give them anything easy, but as it usually goes with this Springbok team towards the tail end of the game, when that bomb squad comes on, they'll probably have too much. Get that try. Perhaps it'll play out quite similarly to last week's game. Another 23-15 kind of job, probably for the Boks. But it
could go either way. Go either. I'll probably agree with that. I think the Boks have slightly too much for Scotland, but it'll still be a really good contest and a really good watch to get us going on Saturday. Who do you got in that one? Let us know in the comments down below.
Absolutely.
But in the meantime, I think we are going to move on.
Thank you very much for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to give it a like, share with your friends, and leave a comment down below as well. We really do want to hear your thoughts.